Dominic, Mimmo, Mr. Tolomeo.
Probably the most romanticized tomato at one point.
You nailed so many points.
American people have this tremendous misconception.
But how do I know how to pick the right flour for what I'm gonna do? Ciao amici, I'm Master Leo Spizzirri, Director of Education for the Pizza University and Culinary Arts Center, and I'd like to welcome you to a new episode of Pizza Chat. I'm here today with my good friend Mimmo Tolomeo, who's the corporate chef for Orlando Foods. And I want to talk to you today, Mimmo. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
About the great products that you guys offer. Because here at Pizza University and Culinary Arts Center, we pride ourselves at using the most authentic products that we can source and the best that we can offer to our students. Mimmo, again, thank you for being here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about these products that we bring in?
Yeah, absolutely. So first, thank you for having me. Second, you guys know that Caputo and Ciao are huge sponsors here at Pizza University, and they are used in many of the classes. The beauty about getting to use Caputo flour, as you know, is that we're not just an all-purpose flour. We have a flour for every purpose. Caputo does a tremendous job at studying the market trends, see what's up and coming and popular, and then quickly developing a flour for that product. So you don't just, use one bag of flour, to do all your pizzas. We have, whether it's Pizzirri and Sacchoroso to do Neapolitan, you have Americana to do different New York styles, Detroit and Sicilian with them, and now we have the newest addition, Adia, which will help you guys really create one of the best crust you'll make when it comes to Roman pizza, pizza intaglia, pizza al taglio, pinza, as well if you want to get into more artisanal pan products. Aria is definitely the flour that a lot of people are interested in right now, especially because it's built with a sourdough built into the flour. So you're not only getting that incredible crunch, but also that flavor that a lot of people look for when it comes to any type of sourdough flavored product.
And this is really amazing for someone like me to be able to write curriculum the way we do, to bring in new and innovative classes, and to maybe show people the first time an introduction to these different styles that you mentioned, and to be able to, kind of go into grandma's pantry, if you will. You remember, grandma, I know she always had everything in there,
yeah.
And no matter what people came over, there could be 5 people or 20 people that came to the house, she was always able to cook, and she was ready all the time. And for me to have these ingredients in-house, it's always amazing because, like you said, I've got a flour for every type of pizza that I'm gonna make. Or to have a tomato that, no matter if it's a whole peel tomato or it's already crushed in a can, yep, we can make all of these different styles of pizza very simply just by writing a recipe, right? And I think this is a really cool thing for me. When you see the trends, let's say going into 2025, what are you noticing that's in the market right now that's coming down the pipe?
Definitely, if you asked me this a year ago, I thought for sure, every old style of pizza gets a new artisanal life. So New York was the biggest one. Artisanal New York pizza became huge. Last year when people asked me, I really thought it was going to be more artisanal Sicilian and grandma style pizzas, but Roman was the sleeper. It really took off, and Roman, really struggled in the States for a few years to get off the ground. I think that will continue into next year, but I'm still believe that artisanal Sicilian and more Americanized pan style pizzas like Sicilian and grandma are going to kind of have their moment, and not next year, definitely the year after, because it follows the same trend. Everything gets an artisanal makeover. Let's call it that.
I can remember probably 6-7 years ago going to Italy and actually going all the way down the road to get a master certification in Roman style pizzas. And in Rome, there's multiple varieties of pizza. We have the pizza in teglia, which you mentioned, which is the pan pizza that's served in Rome that you typically would see almost like our New York slice counter, right? You'd have a full counter full of all these beautiful variety of pizzas. They call it pizza al taglio, taglio, very different than the teglia, right? Teglia is the pan. Taglio refers to serving the pizza cut by weight, right? And this style was non-existent here in the States. And to come back to America talking about a dough that's very high hydration.
Yeah.
Typically, we always did that dough with a blend of flours because it's got so much water and it's a long maturation process.
Yeah.
In Italy, it's done with a process that takes 96 hours. 72 to 96 hours is very typical.
Yeah.
And the one thing that in my experimentation, like with this new Aria flour you brought out, this is a flour that we can, let's say, maybe do a bulk dough and have ready within 24 hours. And it's super light and airy and crunchy and all those different things. It's great.
Yeah.
But then on the other side of it, take that same dough, don't put it in a pan, be very gentle and dimpling it with
my
your
favorite stuff.
fingers. And now we've got the gorgeous pizza alla palla or pizza al metro, the pinza. All these come from that world. The word pinza refers to that pressing, right? Or that crushing with your fingers.
Yeah.
And I think that this to me was where this style struggled so much coming into the United States.
Yeah.
For yourself, what would you say that you saw when you hit the market with people trying to do this for the first time?
I think it was more just you had to educate the customer. Especially in New York, you're in really one of the pizza capitals of the United States, and the customers were 100% used to New York Sicilian grandma. And then all of a sudden you put something out that not only looks different to them, because you have, like you said, these countertops with, pizzas in a pan with all different style toppings on it, but then you now had to explain to them, well, this isn't a grandma, because it's not as thin and crisp as they thought it would be. It is going to be a little bit bigger, a little bit fluffier. And you also have toppings that are much, much different than what they were used to walking into a typical New York style pizzeria. So I think once customers became educated and places like Talio and started doing well and started getting recognition, it became much broader. It achieved a much broader audience, and that started to really pique people's interest. I do think, though, and it was the one thing I always said, was that with Roman pizza, you always needed to be paired with something. So I think a few places that maybe did struggle in the beginning were just trying to do only Roman style pizzas. And, again, that goes with educating the customer. They're walking into a pizzeria and they're not seeing their typical New Yorks on the counter or even garlic nuts, let's just say. They might be more apprehensive about it. I think once it was paired with your traditional New York style or American style pizzerias, then it was able to find its audience much easier.
With your role as a corporate chef, I know that you kind of do the same thing I do in the background too. We field a lot of dough questions and technical questions. And to me, one of the biggest questions that I had is that the Roman style, now that we're talking about it, was always one of the hottest styles that everybody wanted to know about. Because when you do it right, like I say, it's like a religious experience, because all you hear is, oh my God, right? Yeah. And it's so beautiful because it's light, it's airy, it's crispy, it hits all the marks.
Yeah.
But the technical skill to do this pizza is really important, because all those air bubbles that are retained inside of that dough, if you smash that dough too much, there's no more bubbles, and then guess what? You just have this like flat piece of bread.
And you lost a lot of the flavor too.
Yep. Do you get a lot of those kind of calls like, hey, I did everything the way you said it to do it, and it didn't come out quite that right, that good?
Yeah, it's definitely one of the pizzas that does require the most time to practice, get used to, because it's not like, Neapolitan, you can, work with it and get it fairly simply. Let's say, 5 days, someone will get it. Same with New York, because the styles are similar enough that they can work together. But for the most part, this is the first time for people to be able to work with a dough at that high hydration, right? Minimum 75, and they've seen them go all the way up to 85, 90%. So it's just something new, just the feel of it. And then getting used to balling it, getting used to stretching it. So it takes a lot of time. It's definitely, I would say, the most difficult style of pizza to learn. And that's why you're starting to find more and more qualified instructors that are going out teaching it and coming here to take courses and doing these things, classes with Leo. So,
You know, I'm so excited because the people watching this might not know yet, but we actually have a 3-day intensive course that you and I are going to be teaching together here at Pizza University in November, and we're going to nail in 3 days all the contemporary pizzas. We're going to do the contemporary Neapolitan. We're going to do the contemporary New York, and we're going to do the contemporary Roman.
all using a biga.
All using a biga, right? And the cool thing about it is that for us to be able to talk about all the different flours and why we're selecting these flours, and if you wanted to use just one flour, your dough is going to come out like this and you're going to make a really great pizza. But if you made a special mix, putting a variety of flours together, now you're not making something that's maybe so Wonder Bread, that we can make something beautiful and interesting. And I think that this is going to be where the magic of you and I coming together. I mean, who's not going to want to sit 3 days with such gorgeous Calabrese men, right? But I think that the cool thing about it is to have all this expertise from two different sides of the fence, let's call it, right? I know it's always you know, when a guy like me and you get together, it's always like, oh, the guy from Chicago, the guy from New York. Right? But I think that this is one of the cool things, to be able to come and say, anybody's welcome. We'll teach anybody, no matter if you're a home baker or a professional. You know, for you, what are you most excited about teaching during those 3 days?
The thing I'm most excited about and with this class is that, for me, this feels like probably one of the most technically advanced classes that's going to be here, because it's not so much just learning, you know, how to do a New York pizza or a Sicilian or anything like that. You're now getting into a different level of pizza making. It's using, and not only using, but also understanding pre-ferments, most specifically the biga. I'm excited to get into that and have students understand why we chose this specific pre-ferment to use, and even understand the other ones, the blending of the flours, why one flour might work better in a pre-ferment than another, and then why we're closing them with different flours. So for the students, I always say I'm jealous, because when we got into it, finding a school, someone to teach you was really hard. To get this level of education offered to you in a class is something really special. Especially, I always say that pizza's in the middle of an evolution right now, where the customers are no longer satisfied with just your standard slice shop options. They are more educated, they know more about the product, and they are either looking to create and give that, you know, in their restaurants, or seeking out the pizzerias that have those artisanal styles. So this is very, very exciting.
I'm really excited too. And you know, for me to put at least an opportunity in front of you to say, hey, Mimmo, I got this crazy idea. Like you said, back in the day, like if I wanted to learn about any of these styles that we're talking about, the only way to really learn about them was to jump on a plane and go to Italy. And then to really dive into pre-ferments, specifically the biga, which I would say is probably the one pre-ferment that everybody chases after, just because of what it does to the dough and the structure and the openness and all that. But there's really, I would say, and I'd beg to challenge, this is the first class of its kind being offered. We might be the first ones ever doing this class. And I have a feeling that once we do it, it's probably gonna get copied a bunch, but without us two in it,
it's not.
It's not the same.
It's the opportunity to be, like you said, we are the guys we're in the background. We're the guys doing the training, developing the recipes. So the level of technical knowledge that you're going to get in this class is, it's second to none. So I think it's exciting for the students who have already signed up, and for everyone who will sign up. Absolutely.
That's really awesome. And I just got to put this out there, just because I said this whole Chicago, New York thing, right? We probably would both say that our cities are the greatest pizza cities in the United States, right?
Yes, in the U.S., yes.
But what is your feeling about this whole Connecticut being the place of pizza in America?
Well, it was invented in New York, so I'll leave it at that.
Well, yeah, they can say whatever they want, right? It all came from New York. I agree. That was a pretty shocker to me. And, without getting too political into this whole thing, whoever did it, whatever. Maybe they were the first ones to just say, boom, we'll put the stamp on it since the flag wasn't planted yet, right?
Yeah.
But I just thought it was a given that we would say that New York is the place.
Yeah.
Even as a kid, me being from Chicago, born and raised, if you asked me where the best pizza in America is, I would literally spit out, you got to go to Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And now I know there's a lot of boroughs and a lot of stuff, right?
No, Brooklyn, if you're going to pick boroughs, I would say Brooklyn's is the borough, but Manhattan is where it started. So,
Yeah.
but definitely Brooklyn. But the beauty of Chicago is Chicago has its own different styles of pizza.
It's different, and again, we'll just leave it at that. I'm not. You guys know what side I sit on that fence,
deep
right?
dish is not pizza.
It's not pizza.
Not Chicago. That's tourist pizza.
Yeah, it's
tavern, baby.
If you go to a tavern pizza, I'll sit down, a couple beers, and pitch a couple pitchers.
That's Chicago pizza.
That's it. So one of the things that I see a lot is regional varieties of tomatoes. Okay.
Yeah.
And I've always been one of those people that have been like, you know what, if you're going to select a style of pizza and try to use the style of tomato that goes along with it until you start kind of seeing where all the big guys are, right? And the big guys meaning the producers of tomatoes, right? And then to be able to say, you know what, just because I'm making a New York pizza, does that mean I have to use a tomato that comes from America? I used to be that guy that said, nope, you have to use an American tomato to make an American pizza, until probably about 4 or 5 years ago. It was really obvious when you start going to the tomato harvest and you start to see the qualities of the tomatoes and the way they're grown. What do you think about that whole thing?
Well, I think for me, one of the biggest things that when I started in this industry and I wanted to, change New York style pizza, the first question I had was the tomato. And I wanted, in my eyes, it was pizza, no matter where it's from in the United States, was always an Italian product. It was, brought over from Italy by Italians. So it made, perfect sense to me to go and use an Italian tomato. And quickly I landed on Ciao, because the one thing people know is before I became the corporate chef of these brands, I was their customer first. And that was because I did my tests. And what I always found was there was more of a natural flavor to Ciao tomatoes. It was, if I opened up a can of Ciao tomatoes and I took a bite out of that tomato and then I went to the supermarket or farm and bit into a tomato, they tasted exactly the same. So there was no sensation of added flavors to it, whether it's sugars or salts or what have you. For me, I think we both agree that the south of Italy does have the best culture of growing tomatoes. It's just the region, the soil, the temperature, all of that comes into effect with how the tomato is grown, and then the natural sweetness that occurs inside those tomatoes. And then the world-renowned San Marzano DOP tomatoes, they're been loved by this country for, I would say, about 30 years now, since they've, really came in and taken off. The biggest thing to understand is it's also the one tomato that is the biggest knockoff. There are a lot of companies that will pretend to sell you San Marzano tomatoes, right even on the can San Marzano style, or just blatantly say San Marzano with, no proof that they come from that. The one thing that people do know and love about Ciao tomatoes is that our San Marzano DOP tomatoes do come from the region where they are supposed to come from, and include the stamps that are on the cans to show you that this is approved from the European Union.
That's one of the things too that I think it's really important in the education of tomatoes, because you might think that you're buying an authentic product and you go to the grocery store and then you start seeing all these different varieties on the shelf, and how do you navigate that? And you hear people say all the time, like, we've made it so loud and clear that there's a stamp, there's a number. The thing I think that people don't realize is that in the region of that Agro Sarnese, Nocerino area where all the San Marzano tomatoes come from, right? There's actually a consortium, no different than if you were getting real prosciutto di Parma or Parmigiano Reggiano. There's consortiums that are come together to define what needs to happen to create those authentic products. And when you get into the region of Campania, and specifically when you get into that Agro Sarnese area, all of a sudden, it's such a small, like, postage stamp of an area to say, this small area producing tomatoes for the entire world, it's not physically possible. So when you hear that they physically put a number on every single can, and it's documented with a license plate that they can track when it was picked, when it was harvested, all that kind of stuff. When you go to the grocery store and you hear somebody tell you, well, there's a stamp from the consortium that looks like it's yellow, right? And then you go to the grocery store and you see that somebody put San Marzano on the label, and on the back, there is something that looks like the yellow stamp, but in the middle is their brand logo. This is not what we're talking about, guys, right?
You'll look for the blue and the yellow stamp that come from the consortium that have the numbers on it. And like he said, they will, on the can, put on a blue stamp. And then when you really, really look at it, it's a brand logo. Or one time I did see a picture of a tomato inside the stamp. So
this is what I like to call the Scam Marzano. So I think that, again, I think that should put it to rest. If you are going to go out there and look for these, it's going to be a very specific can. It's got a very specific label. It's going to have a number to that can, and that's really the only way. And not for nothing else, if you really want to know if you paid for a real one, you will know you paid for a real San Marzano tomato when you dish out the money for one, right? They're not cheap because they're not easy to produce. They're very limited in production, and at the end of the day, if you're one of the lucky ones to get them, hopefully you got the real one and you do something amazing with it.
Those are the perfect case of supply and demand. You're paying a premium for the tomato, but it's because you're not only using a product that is a premium tomato, but there's so few of it, true ones that are out there. And yeah, you do justify the cost that way because you know exactly what you're getting.
Another thing too, when you taste the Ciao tomatoes, right? And I'll speak about Ciao too. Let's just say whole peel tomatoes. We have the Authentica here out, which is basically the same. It's the same exact tomato, just ground, right? Same juice, same pulp, same everything. It's inside that can. It's no different than buying a whole peel, right? It just saves a step, I would imagine, right?
It saves a step, and it also saves you time because the one thing that I fell in love with Ciao tomatoes was that the fact that they're packed in a puree. So, most tomatoes are packed in a juice, and then you'll start to see when chefs have to start cooking it out, or they start adding, different pastes or anything to the tomatoes. What I loved about it was when you pack in a puree, because Ciao has a state-of-the-art evaporator where the juices go in, the water comes out, it re-energizes the plant, and the puree goes back into the can. So it, like you said, saves you time from having to put the plum tomatoes inside of a food mill. But more importantly, you don't have to worry about cooking out the water or anything like that. You can put it directly onto the dough, and it won't just run water all over your pizza. So it's simplicity, it saves time, and saving time saves money. If I don't have to have a worker, sit there and open up a bunch of cans, mill them, and then not only that, but either mix them or cook them down to reduce the water to be put onto pizzas, then, it's a no-brainer at that point.
The one thing that I would challenge everybody out there is this. I know that on social media, there's a lot of cool kids promoting different ingredients, different brands, right? A lot of times you never know if this is really what they used or if maybe they're being influenced in some way to use those products, right? Which, again, everybody's got their right to do whatever they want. But I would challenge you, those of you that are watching this or listening to this, go and get your favorite varieties of tomatoes. Put them all together, open the cans, don't put anything in them. And then literally taste those tomatoes next to each other. And I promise you, you're gonna start to pick out the ones that you feel are the closest to what is in your mind as the gold standard. The one thing I will say is this though. There's people who have never eaten a real San Marzano tomato before. We've had the luxury that we've been trampling around in the country, in the dirt, right? To understand these tomatoes from the time that they come off the plant to the point they go into the can, right? Or to be able to even eat them fresh, right? The one thing I will say is that there's a misconception that when people eat the San Marzano tomato, the real ones, they have this idea that it's going to be like this sweet tomato, and the San Marzano is not a sweet tomato.
Like sugar, they think.
Yeah, like sugar. And you know, to me, if you understand geography,
Yeah.
and you understand where that Agro Sarnese Nocerino area lies, you're like literally on the equator.
Yeah.
Right? You're in one of the hottest spots that you could be. And to say that you're in that hot spot and you've got this dirt that's this fertile soil because of all the volcanic material in that region from Mount Vesuvius, right? You have a tomato that does have a bit of acidity in it, but it's supposed to taste like that, right? What do you think about this whole thing when people are trying to compare, like, oh, I use a domestic tomato, or my favorite tomato, I put sugar in it?
I think, you know, when it comes to San Marzano, they were probably the most romanticized tomato at one point. Again, because like we said, there wasn't many coming in, so it becomes, well, these are special. And I think the one thing that one of the things that came out was that they were supposed to like be sugary sweet. The minute you bit into it, it was going to taste like sugar. It's not the case. And I think that people are like start to look for that profile. But the biggest thing was because of a lot of Americans had that belief, a lot of American companies would then start to come out with their own Italian tomato, and they were extremely sweet out of the can. That's not what they taste like. The beauty of using a product like Ciao, where you are just getting the tomato, is it's open to what you prefer. That's one of the most important things. If you want it to be saltier, you know, I always say there's chef's tomatoes. If you want them to be saltier, you can add salt. If you like sweet, by all means, I don't know if you do, then, you know, you could add sugar to it, but at least we gave you the option, and we started you off with the most important part. You're getting quality Italian tomatoes from Italy sent here. You know, when you open them up, and like you said, a million times we said it, hold a real tomato, try a Ciao tomato, and then try the other ones, and you tell us which one tastes like a fresh tomato. Then from that point forward, you have the option to doctor it up any way you want forward. But the biggest thing, and I know like when I was selecting tomatoes for my pizzeria, it was, I want to be able to dictate what I want my sauce to taste like, not what somebody tells me it should taste like, or what they think Italian tomatoes taste like. So I think that education is super important to help people decide what product that they would like to use going forward.
That's really amazing. And you know, spending so much time in Italy like we have, you really do start to understand that, you know, Italy is a small country, right? In comparison, people to land, right? It's very small. And the products that are grown there or produced there are some of the most sought after in the world. So when you get into, let's say, a tomato, right? And we have this conversation, even the areas that they're harvested in, the region of Campania is very large, right? And to say that, you know, you have this small postage stamp of an area where all the San Marzanos come from, but then all of a sudden you start talking about, let's call it the foothills of Mount Vesuvius, where all the rest of the tomatoes are being harvested in the region, right? The amazing thing to me is that when you eat these tomatoes, right, and you say, well, now you're near the Gulf, right? Or you're near the water. These tomatoes grew near the water, where all of a sudden you could taste even the natural salts. If you have a good enough palate, and you say that you can taste the natural salt in the tomato, that's a thing that blows me away. And to me, I'm one of those guys that we open a can of tomatoes, we get a can of Pilati, open them up, because, you know, there's sometimes a little variance in the
every crop
tomato, where it came from, when it was picked, and you taste that first tomato. I'm that guy. I'll take a whole peel tomato every time I open a can.
That's what I have for lunch. That shows.
It's great, right?
I love it.
You take a piece of bread and you rub it like we grew up.
We grew up like that. Yeah, my father had a bakery, so we got a can of tomatoes. You ate the tomato, you put it inside the loaf of bread, you took the inside out. That's it. Salt and basil, and that was it.
There's nothing better than that. And before you even start saying, well, I've got a recipe, right? That this is my recipe, to be able to taste the tomato itself and saying, yeah, I'm validating that this is the right tomato for my recipe. This is, I think, I love what you said about the chef's tomato, right? Mimmo, when I go in front of a client, I do a lot of consulting, and obviously I do a lot of teaching all over the country. When I go in front of a client, The thing that I probably hear the most is, you know all these different varieties of flour that are out there, but how do I know how to pick the right flour for what I'm going to do? Do you get that a lot?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably 60% of my job is just that education part of going to the end user, going to our customers, and it's always starting with the same two questions: what style of pizza do you want to make? What kind of oven do you have? And from there, not only am I a great resource for that, but Caputo Flour in general, we have all these wonderful spec sheets that we give to our customers that breaks down each flour and even goes further by telling you W count, telling you the protein percentage, what oven you're supposed to use them in, what styles they come with. So we have such a vast catalog of flours. The beauty of working with us is the support that comes behind it, where I think the one feature that people love the most is this tremendous amount of accessibility to me. The customers call me, text me, email me, any questions that they have, whether it's trying a new recipe or, like you said, trying to decide which flour, because you hit the nail on the head. Sometimes they'll go to a broadliner, maybe a broadliner only carries one of, over 10 flours that we have. And in that case, they're going to sell you on that one and say, yeah, we have Caputo, but that flour that they're selling you more than likely may not be the application that's best suited for what you want to do. So, to be able to reach out to one of us, whether it's myself or our amazing customer service team, they will help push you in the right direction onto what flour you need for which product. Or, like I said, you hire a consultant. But I know when I was choosing which flour I wanted to have inside the pizzeria, the amount of support, not just technically that I got from Caputo, but the amount of support in marketing. That's tremendous, especially when you're first starting up, to have this team that not only is behind probably the most recognized imported flour brand in the United States, to have a marketing team behind it that is going to help you with social, is going to help you with content, because we know today that, what are we doing here? Social media.
Yeah.
It's the best way to reach to your customers. So to have this, tremendous team behind the product that, of course they want to see you succeed. So they're going to put 100%, 110% effort into it, because if you succeed, they succeed. It's a recipe for success every single time.
With all the different flours that you offer in your lineup, I think it's important that people understand that it really, if you were going to say, like, what flour should I use, like, as you're passing us in a trade show or something,
yeah,
I think that the one question that we probably ask first is, well, what type of equipment are you baking in,
yeah,
right? And if you said, look, these are all the flours we have, maybe you can give just a quick breakdown based on maybe the oven, and say, like, what, if you're making this style in this oven, this is what you would use.
Yeah, so whenever I get those questions of, hey, I'm looking to do a pizzeria, which flour would I use? It's the same two opening questions. What style of pizza do you want to do? What kind of oven are you using? So in which case, let's say someone's saying, I'm opening up a Neapolitan or contemporary Neapolitan style pizza, and I'm using, a Marafoni dome oven or a Marafoni rotating oven. From that point, now I know that I have some flexibility in the flours to work with depending on what they want to do. If they wanted to do your standard Neapolitan pizza, then I would suggest either the blue bag pizzeria or the red bag, the Sacco Rosso, depending on different hydration levels and how aggressive they want to be with their fermentation. That's how I would choose between those two. If they say to me, I want to do something contemporary with a pre-ferment, then boom, Nuvola Super is just what's going to be for them, especially if they're using a Marafoni gas-assisted Neapolitan oven, where they might play with the temperature and actually have more control of the temperature and lower it down to, less than the usual 800-900 degrees Fahrenheit for traditional Neapolitan. On the other side, if they're using the Marafoni stack ovens, now we're opening up ourselves to even more flour. So if they want to do a New York, Detroit, Grandma, Sicilian, I can lead them to the Caputo Americana or Americana Super. Same thing, depending on how aggressive they want to go with fermentation and hydration on the dough. Do they want to lean more traditional or more artisanal? As then getting into the Roman styles, originally everyone was using Nuvola Super to do that, but now that we have the Aria, it opens us up to be able to now give recipes, multiple recipes, whether they want to do long or short fermentations, and be able to now move into this electric oven to create this product. So what started as, two flours when they first came into the United States, the red and the blue, and was specifically for Neapolitan, I mean, we've now crossed over that barrier that, no longer is Caputo just for Neapolitan or Italian style pizzas. We now cover the entire spectrum and have the recipes to back it up, to show you, to make it as simple as possible for you. There's always going to be adjustments, when you switch from whatever you're currently using to what we're using. But again, that's where the support is so important, is so helpful, to be able to reach out to myself and Leo, because Leo's just as knowledgeable about the product as I am. It's a comfort zone knowing that not only are the customer now going to be able to face what we always say the future of the industry is, which is artisanal products, but they can do it confidently by having an army of support behind them to help them achieve that.
One thing that I used to do a lot, through my training as I was in Italy, and I spent so much time learning the different techniques, both traditional and like how to make these styles authentically. When I came back to the States, the way that I learned it, maybe now is considered very old school, and I've changed the way that I made dough, because back in the day, we always used to select the flour based on its strength or the kind of gluten or the amount of gluten that's going to be created with that flour.
Yeah.
The more gluten that we had, the longer maturation we could go, or the more gluten that we had, even if you didn't have a technical spec, it was going down to how much water you can put in that dough. And now it seems that today, everything is all about how much water can I put in this dough and how high of a hydration can I go.
Yeah.
Things like, the point I want to make is like, when you get into like these, standard variety of flour, and then let's call it their super twin, right?
Caputo, yeah.
With Caputo, right? You have like the Nuvola or Nuvola Super. You have Americana or Americana Super, right? And you're talking about the increase in the protein. When you talk about like in the W, right? And when you talk about things like how much water you could put into a dough, and you get into the conversation of, man, Americana Super is like 15.25% protein, which to me, like we would only use flour that strong if maybe we're making a panettone or something, right?
Yeah.
But the thing I love about doing a class with you is hearing that, man, if you put enough water in there, you can go really fast with this. Yeah. Maybe you could speak to that, standard variety towards the super twin.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest question, especially when it comes to Americana, because those two are the most popular ones here when it comes to regular or super. Probably the easiest way I can explain it, and like Leo was saying, it comes down to, let's just say, how artisanal do you want your product, right? So if I want to do a dough that is ready in 24, 48 hours max, what we'll say is high hydration, we would say is high 70s, 80, mid 70s, 80s, and lower for us would be in the 60s. Well, for traditional New York pizzerias, it was more in the 50s was the hydration. So when it comes to, using a flour, we're going to go up to 60, 65% hydration, maybe 68%, and we know we want a quicker fermentation on that, then we're good to use the weaker flour, because what happens is by having a weaker flour, you do not need as much time to do your fermentation, and you're not putting a tremendous amount of water into it, so it will handle what you're throwing at it. When you move into the super is twofold. It could be technical as far as your recipe goes, but it also could just be based on your establishment and what you're doing. So with that, I'd say, let's say you're a multi-unit location and you have a commissary where all the dough is being made out of. You need flexibility in your dough. You need to know that the dough won't blow out in, after 2 days, and maybe one location wasn't as busy as the other one. I mean, that's why I had switched to it. When we had multiple locations, it was about dough management. Some days and some locations were busier than others. It was you know, you always tried your best to gauge what the numbers would be based on previous sales. But we both know that, you know, this industry is you just throw a dart at the board and whatever happens that day happens. So having the flexibility of knowing that, well, if it's not used the first or the second day because one location was slower than another one, it does have the legs to go the extra day, and that way I'm not having wasted goods and throwing out product. But when it comes to a more technical standpoint, especially as we're moving into this trend of really super artisanal New York style pizza, well, yeah, everyone wants to throw more water at it. Why? Because the more water that they're throwing into the dough and the longer and slower they're baking it, they're getting that super crispy product. And I'm not going to say it, but, you know, due to social media, somebody likes something a certain way and without flopping, and well, they've starting to learn that the more water you put in, the slower you cook it, you are ending up with a product that is much, much lighter. It's not dense, and it does tend to be crispy. So now that they want to throw in this extra water, and now that the advent of more people using pre-ferments, right, to create complex flavors in their dough. So whether they're using a Biga or they're using a Polish, now you're adding this extra power, as my father would call it, extra power into the dough, and you're going to increase fermentation time. But you want to increase it, but you still want it to go the full 24 hours. So now you need that strength to be able to hold on to the increased power from the pre-ferments, the increased hydration to get that light, airy, crispy product that you're looking for. All these things combined, you find yourself needing a flour that can hold all this added pressure into it to do a 24 or 48 hours, or even if you're doing a direct or even longer, 3, 4, 5 day fermentations. That's when you start walking into the super. So it is twofolded. It is very technical. If you want to do pre-ferments, higher hydration, and your dough will be ready 24, 48 hours, you want to use a strong flour that can handle all that. But if you want to do a direct dough, a little bit higher hydration, but now you want to extend it to 3, 4, 5 days, which a lot of people are doing now, again, you need to have a flour that does have a high protein, and not only just the protein count too, the W count is just as important, because the W is the strength of the gluten that's found inside of that protein. So if you can have, there's plenty of flours that are high gluten, but a lot of them can't give you the W count, or they won't give you the W count because all those gluten strands are destroyed. So if you have a flour that has a high protein, but the W count is non-existent on it because they're using, you know, wheat that was purchased in futures, now you have the gluten structure is all destroyed. It's less likely to be able to hold all of that hydration, all of that pre-ferment, and also the longer fermentation on it. So that's why we have the two separate flours.
And to me, the huge takeaway, because everything you said is basically a compressed masterclass in understanding
that was very
dough science, yeah. Right? Because I mean, you nailed so many points in just there what you said. But if I had to tell you to sort through it and watch this a few times to understand what you said, the takeaway would also be that the temperature is really important, because it's great to put a lot of water in a dough, but you have to get it out. So if you're gonna be doing these very high hydration doughs and expect that you're gonna bake them very quickly, let's say in a very hot Neapolitan oven, if we use that as an example, you're gonna end up with a dough that feels like it's very gummy or chewy on the inside. Great to put water in, but you gotta get it out. So the more water you put in, the more you're gonna need to back off that temperature. And that was one of the points that you made of let it bake nice and slow, get it out. And all of a sudden, you're gonna have the magic of the oven, and all that water disappears. And what's left is this beautiful open structure that's light, airy, and crispy. And to me, that's why I've used Caputo for so long. That's why I select these flours. And that's why you guys are such an amazing partner to not only me, but to the Pizza University and Culinary Arts Center.
I mean, that's why I started working for them. You know, I had such a love for the product that I found that even as an owner or running pizzerias, I spent more time. I found more excitement in trying to convince people. Like, I already knew why I loved it. You knew why you loved it. But I started to realize I found more excitement in explaining to people why I'm using it, why they should use it, like how it's going to change the industry and how it's going to change their pizzerias. That, you know, I loved it so much that I made it a point, like, this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to be on the education part of it, because that's where I found my passion. And you know, I think that speaks a lot to people when I go to them. I think they never feel like I'm coming there to sell them something. It's because I've had this proven track record for, you know, 5 years before that. No, like, I've selected these products on my own and promoted them on my own because I love them so much. And just the importance of having the team behind it that helped promote a lot of us, you know, like, I don't think they get enough credit for that, but a lot of your favorite pizza makers started with, you know, the Caputo and Ciao family, and had the promotion behind it and that huge push that gave to a lot of us. And that, you know, it says a lot, not only about the brands, but the family and the people that are attached to it. So
I couldn't agree more. And, you know, the last thing I really do want to just really focus on this last bit here is that to have the knowledge and expertise that you have, right? It's a given. I have a lot of knowledge and expertise in a lot of different subjects, right? As far as pertaining to pizza, but we're not salespeople.
No.
At the end of the day, we're educators, we're teachers, we're mentors, and it wouldn't be right for us to say, my goal is to try to sell you something. Yes, you guys have salespeople, we have salespeople, everybody salespeople, but we aren't salespeople.
Right.
At the end of the day, we want to make the right product. We want to help you make the right product. And if you've never made a product, we want to give you the tools to start experimenting and make that first pizza your own.
Yeah. So the big thing for me is, my goal, like you said, my goal is to make people see what I saw 5 years ago, and to make them understand why I loved something so much and why I loved brands so much. And that I think speaks volumes to everyone. And now we get to do it in a class format. So that's a lot of fun.
That's great. And if you haven't checked us out yet, my name is Leo Spizzirri. This is my friend Mimmo Tolomeo, and we are going to be doing a class coming up at Pizza University in November, where we're going to be doing contemporary style pizzas, focusing on the Biga pre-ferment, which is going to be a 3-day intensive course. It's going to be a lot of fun, and we can't wait for you to join us in class soon. On behalf of me, Leo Spizzirri, and everybody here at the Pizza University and Culinary Arts Center, I want to thank you, Dominic, Mimmo, Mr. Tolomeo. I am so happy to have been here with you today, and I thank all of you out there for watching us. This has been Pizza Chat, and we can't wait to bring the next episode to you soon. Ciao, guys.
Ciao, guys. Thank you.